don't think that anyone would disagree that desire and passion are necessary in a romantic relationship. I think we're all pretty much on the same accord when it comes to that. But one of the things I've been thinking about lately, and a question that really came to mind is what happens when desire and passion pause, fade, or exit completely? What do we do? How do we handle that? And what does it mean? Right? Let's be real. Physical looks is very much where a lot of relationships begin. And there's nothing wrong with that. You should be physically attracted to the person that you want to be in a relationship with, for the most part, right? And, when we think about and this was the thought process I had when I thought about this, about I'm looking at myself, right? And I'm in my 40s, which is what it is. I don't feel like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm old," or, "Oh, I'm still trying to, show people that I got it." My age is my age, and I love me at whatever age I am or I will be. But I definitely look different. As you get older, you look different, and I thought about, relationships that are very long term and how growing old with someone, right? If that's what you're into, if that's the kind of relationship that you want, that physical desire changes, right? How the person looked when you first got with them may not be how they look 10, 15, 20 years down the line. And that's a real thing. And how do we deal with that? But more so than that, and I can say this as a Virgo, and as much as I may hate to admit this, I just have to be honest. I can get extremely annoyed with people very quickly. And I could be like, "Oh my god, I love him," one day. I love how he looks. The next day, I'm like, "Whoa, what was I thinking?" Right? And no shade to me or anyone else who does that, but desire, passion, it's not always linear. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying. It's not always linear. It can come in waves. Yet, how do we ride those waves? How do we deal with them? What do we do when one minute we're hot and heavy and we're desirous and we're passionate? And I'm not even talking about sexually, right? We can be desirous of a relationship, of a long term commitment. We can be desirous of doing something together. We can be motivated and passionate about buying a house. We can be motivated and passionate about anything, even individually, right? One day you've got pep in your step, the next day you're like a walking zombie, right? Desire, passion, vitality, all of that comes in waves, right? So, how do we deal with that? Clearly, it's a personal thing, but it made me think about Mars and Mars in our chart, but not even so much Mars in your natal chart. That shows your design for passion generally, right? I'm talking about like your desire and your passion could really follow the cycle of Mars, like when Mars goes retrograde. Now, Mars does not go retrograde every year, and when it does go retrograde, it can be retrograde for months. And this is a time when we experience a lack of motivation, lethargy. We are literally tired, physically tired, and we're not desirous. But even in the realm of relationships, while you can experience this when Mars is retrograde, this desirous, hot and heavy to cold and detached, that is a part of life. That is something that we experience on a daily basis. And it could be so triggering because hot and heavy and desirous is oftentimes equated to acceptance, wanting, I want you. And then subsequently, when the desire fades, it shifts or it wanes, we attribute that to, I don't want you. Is that necessarily true? Or is it more of just an in the moment thing? You know, adulting is so complex yet interesting. I think that when you're younger and when you're in relationships, you attribute a much simpler answer to things, to questions. You know, you're going out with someone and, you know, they've got their hands all over you. Y'all are really feeling each other. In your mind, this person wants me. I am accepted by this person. There's attraction here. There's chemistry, whatever you want to call it. And then they don't have their hands all over you. They're not really paying attention to you. They're cold. They're distant. They seem like they're someplace else when they're with you. You equate that to, they don't want me. There's no attraction. I'm not desirous. They're not desirous of me anymore. Yet we fail to account for the humanity in people. That waning and that shifting of desire and passion, it's not always an attraction thing. Can it be? Yes, clearly. Maybe the person has changed, maybe their energy, their physical look has changed, and that is no longer what you want. That is a thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. Provided that you communicate it in a way that's not hurtful or that's not mean, right? But that's another topic for another day. But that waning and that shifting and that fading of desire, it could be because I had a long day at work. I'm stressed. I have a sick parent. I'm scared. I'm vulnerable. Like in the case of a male, I'm stressed, so I can't perform sexually, right? Like those are all things. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the communication video that I just dropped right before this, right? Where you communicate these things. But I say all this to say that it brings up so much more than just physical look, sexual attraction. Again, you cannot sidestep the emotional nature of this because we tie emotions to desirability and passion. I mean, those are emotions in a sense. But when I say emotions, it's like insecurities, emotional safety. And what I love particularly, if we're speaking about this in the astrological sense, what I love particularly about Mars retrograde is that a pause allows for reflection. Do I still want this thing? Do I still want this relationship? Am I still attracted? Am I still motivated? Now, these are questions you can ask yourself whether Mars is retrograde or not, but these are natural cycles and natural occurrences in life and in relationships. Sometimes I think that when people question, when people reflect, it can often be seen as a bad thing. You're questioning our relationship, you're questioning our connection. And it doesn't have to be. Again, if there is clear communication, right? And if you haven't watched my communication video, watch it because it definitely goes hand in hand with this. But it's okay to reflect. It's okay to think about, do I still desire this person? Am I still sexually attracted to this person? Doesn't mean that, okay, because you're questioning it, now you've got to throw the relationship out completely. Maybe this is a great opportunity for you to reignite your relationship, to keep a flame going. If you're just thinking about it from a scientific perspective, certain conditions have to be present, right? Sometimes the flame, just think about when you light a candle, especially if you're in a room with a fan or if there's a breeze. There are going to be times when the flame is super strong. You know, when you light the candle and the flame is just strong and it's high and it's just steady. We can't expect our relationships to be en fuego like that all the time. There are times when the wind is going to create a ripple in the flame. And the wind could be a metaphor for outside circumstances. There could be a time when the flame gets really low. There are times when the flame looks like it's about to be extinguished, but it's still lit, right? To keep a flame going requires certain conditions, requires certain actions, requires certain reflections. To use the candle situation, and as someone who is a candle maker and has tested hundreds of candles, perhaps to keep the flame strong, you need to rearrange the wax, meaning you have to dig out the wax a little bit because maybe the flame gets engulfed by the wax as it melts, which would prohibit it from being a strong flame. Maybe you need to turn off the fan, or maybe you need to fan the flame for it to rise and for it to be strong and steady. Either way, what I'm trying to say through all these metaphors and candle examples is that waning desire, pause in desire and passion, shift and all these things, it's a wonderful opportunity to reignite the flame of your relationships. If you're willing to have honest communication. Listen, nobody likes to have a conversation where they're being told what they're doing sexually just isn't hitting anymore, literally and figuratively, right? Nobody wants to hear that, but I look at it this way, especially because I can understand that someone may not tell you the truth because they don't care enough to. They've already moved on to the next thing, so why tell you the truth? It doesn't matter. I don't even want to give you the opportunity to fix it or to address it because I don't plan on staying here anyway. But if someone is willing to tell you a truth, a difficult truth, it may mean that they want to fix something, that they want to reignite the flame. Yes, it can be difficult because, again, this is where desire, passion, and emotions go hand in hand, just like communication and emotions. It could spark insecurity. Nobody wants to hear, I don't like how you physically look. It's not turning me on. Now, you don't have to say it that bluntly, but if it is the truth, it is the truth. And if you want to reignite the flame of your relationship, you kind of need to have those conversations, right? There's so many different ways to talk about this topic, like the idea of needing space, the idea or the concept of, especially when you're in a committed or a long-term relationship, about how often you have sex every week, your regular sex life, and if there's a deviation in that, how that can trigger certain emotions, insecurities. It can trigger communication breakdowns. But the point is that a shift in desire and passion is natural. And it happens in all relationships. And because it happens doesn't mean that the relationship is a failure. It's just a great opportunity to reignite the relationship or extinguish a flame. Listen, sometimes the best thing for both people is to extinguish that flame instead of trying to relight a candle that's not going to stay lit. And I'm sorry if I'm overdoing it with the candle analogy, but I talk about what I know. As a matter of fact, it brings up a story of, or I'll give you an example of how I was doing a 7-day candle. And coincidentally, it was a love candle. Now, I'm a candle magic girly. And so when I do my candle magic, that shit hits. In this particular instance, and when I say I was doing it was a red candle for love. This wasn't a love spell. It was a self-love candle. You can have your own opinions, but me personally, when I focus on love, I focus on love within myself so I can attract my person rather than trying to manipulate or force a certain outcome with respect to a particular person. But that's just my opinion. But in any event, I was doing this candle and it kept getting snuffed out. It wasn't in a room where there was window open or a fan. The wax kept engulfing the flame. And at a certain point, I was like, maybe this is a sign I don't need to be doing this candle. Maybe this is a sign that what I'm petitioning, what I'm asking for is not meant to be. That wasn't the case in my situation, right? Like this was a candle that I was like, listen, especially if we're talking about self-love, you got to persist with it. So I persisted and then the candle kept a steady flame and it burned beautifully, right? But sometimes we realize that it's best for both people to extinguish the flame so that you can have a beautiful, bright flame with the right person, the person who is aligned for you. But the reason why we hold on to relationships that don't work or that are not in alignment is subject matter for another video entirely. But I say that to say that a lull or a pause or a shift in desire or passion is not inherently bad. It's extremely useful. It gets you to understand where you're at and ultimately where you want to be. Maybe you don't want a flame with this person, or maybe y'all have been together for so long, you're due for a reignition, right? Those things are important and those things are not willing, those things require reflection every so often. They really do. The other thing I'll say when it comes to desire and passion is that it can speak a lot to speed. Have you ever been in a relationship with someone where at the outset it was like chemistry and fireworks and it sort of propelled you forward into the relationship quickly? And that sort of sets the tone for the relationship, right? So it's like, well, we started quick, so we need to continue quick. So we need to go from A to B to C to D, light speed, right? But invariably, whether you intend to or not, things will slow down at some point, whether life slows you down or you intend to slow down. A slowdown is inevitable. Otherwise, you will crash, obviously. And nobody wants to crash. Nobody really wants to crash out in a relationship. But again, slowing down can invoke feelings of insecurity, of fear, which is valid, right? If we were going 80 miles per hour, 90 miles per hour, and now we're down to 30, what's really good? What's happening? Again, it's an opportunity for reflection. It's an opportunity for recalibration. Imagine you're going 90 miles an hour in the wrong fucking direction. All you're doing is speeding up the wrong thing. You're going super fast to the wrong place. Slowing down can get you to say, wait, are we, do we even want to be going to the same place? Let's start with that. We're both in this car, but is the destination the same? We're going 90 miles per hour. Do we even want to go over there? A slow down can be a good thing. Pump your brakes sometimes. And that speed can really be indicative of one particular facet of your relationships, which could be passion, which could be sex, which could be emotional fulfillment, even. And that speed speaks just to that. And the ability to slow down helps you address everything else. It gives you the opportunity to address everything else. So, slowing down is not a problem. A pause, a shift, it all speaks to recalibration. It all speaks to refinement. And when we look at it in terms of astrology, isn't that what retrogrades are? And so maybe you do experience this kind of energy when Mars is retrograde. And maybe you don't even follow the transits, but you experience a point in time where okay, you're not as energetic or you're thinking about your relationship in terms of do I even still want this? It literally could track to the transit of Mars. And your Mars in particular, especially if you're someone who's like a Scorpio rising or an Aries rising, where you are Mars dominant and where the transit of Mars, particularly Mars retrograde, affects you the most. But this is not meant to be specific to that. This is an understanding that when passion pauses, it's okay. It's okay. There's going to be times for that. Use it constructively. Sometimes a pause is even to conserve your energy. I'm about to get this is gonna about to be adult conversation. So just let me put that out there, right? Sometimes when you're like how do I put this without being like overtly graphic? But when you are with someone sexually, sometimes you need to pause, right? Because you want to keep going, but if you kept going without pausing, you would crash out, right? You wouldn't be able to continue or finish or whatever, right? See? See how that works? Pausing is good. It's a recalibration moment. And whether you decide to fan the flames or extinguish them, there's nothing wrong with either. But take the time to reflect when this happens. Oftentimes, especially if we're questioning our own desirability or our desire when it comes to someone else, whether we still desire them, feelings of guilt can creep in. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Oh, if I'm questioning it, maybe it's not meant to be. Shame is something that should really go out the window. Now, you'll hear a lot of people talking about bring shame back because some people out here are legit shameless, but that's another topic for another day. But don't shame yourself for reflecting. Don't shame yourself for rethinking things. When you understand that within yourself, because don't you think I mean, let me ask, do you like think about it within yourself? Do you think about are there times when you look your best, you feel your best, and then there are times when you don't? You shouldn't shame yourself when you don't, when you're lethargic, when you're just, bed rotting, as they like to call it now, when you go out in your sweats and you don't put on any makeup, or you go out without, a fresh haircut and stuff, right? There are times for that. There are times when you got to stay in bed all day because you're tired, right? Do not shame yourself for that. If you understand that within yourself, that there are times where there will be a lull, where there will be a shift, where there will be a pause, why can't you understand that when it comes to relationships? It's difficult because, yes, it could trigger insecurities, fears, and all of those things, right? I'm not going to invalidate or minimize those things. But if it happens within us personally, it is going to happen within our relationships. And it's not a bad thing. You don't want to be going 90 miles an hour to the wrong destination or in the wrong direction. And these pauses, these lulls, these dips, these shifts, they give you the opportunity for recalibration. So use them for that. It sounds relatively simple. I know it does in theory. In practice, it's a whole other thing. But the more that you practice that understanding and empathy within yourself, the easier it is to spot in relationships and the easier it is to understand. And listen, at a certain point, when you build up yourself enough, and remember, Mars is the planet of self. Mars wants you to be empowered within yourself. My desirability is not the result of someone else wanting me. It's me knowing that I'm desirable in and of myself. So that means that if this person doesn't desire me, it doesn't mean that I'm not desirable. It means that we can't have a flame here, and that's okay. That's okay. When you understand yourself, when you empower yourself, which is exactly what Mars wants you to do, this becomes clearer. And by this, I mean everything that I'm talking about. This becomes clearer and you're able to implement it better. Okay, so there's a pause here. Maybe you are not feeling me anymore. That's okay. Or maybe you are and you're just going through your own shit. Maybe you aren't empowered within yourself. And as a result, the desirability, the passion has waned. That's okay too. How can we work on this? Now, understand this. That is the answer to that question. How can we work on this? It likely is a solo endeavor. Because if the only reason why I'm hot is because you think I'm hot, then honey, I ain't hot. I have to know that I'm hot within myself. I have to desire my damn self. I have to light my own flame before I can join it with someone else's, before we can build a beautiful, big, steady flame together. So, at the heart of this, where I started talking about desire and passion and when it wanes, it begins with you, which is where everything begins, clearly. It begins with you, your own desirability, your own passion, your own autonomy, your self esteem, your self worth. And when that is strong, the fire of your desire and passion can be strong as well. And it can weather any wind, any storm, and it could always be lit exactly how we want it to. All right. So, if you want to know more about your own self, which is how I help people, all of my resources are in the description box below. Best thing to do is to sign up for the blueprint, which is my signature natal chart experience. So you can understand this before you start inviting other flames to the party. All right. And again, all of that information is in the description box below. All right, my loves. Thanks so much for tuning into this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.